Welcome now to video number 7. We're getting close to the end of this video series here, and I appreciate your time that you've spent investing in this knowledge, hopefully a little bit of wisdom in there as well, and that you're actually taking those proactive steps to start to implement a few of these ideas so that you can improve your quality of life. Now, in this particular video, what I need to do then is talk a little bit about stress so that we can help you compartmentalize a few of the different things that are going on in your life so that you know you're actually directing things in the right place. So in this and having a proper understanding, it's useful to know what is the real nature of stress. Stress in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's a force that propels action. Question is which way is it propelling you? And second question, are you being led by it? Or are you deliberately influencing it? So going back just a wee little bit here, you might remember we talked about your brain essentially being the ultimate supercomputer that coordinates the most beautiful symphony that's played in the universe. So we have the 40 trillion body cells that are controlled by the 100 billion brain cells to the tune of 40 quadrillion bits of information per second. All of this done by that innate intelligence beyond your conscious mind to make sure that everything is going to be able to work in your body the way that it's supposed to so that you can express health, function, life as close to 100% as is possible for you. We previously also talked about how everything then starts with a mental and a neurological impulse. Everything that you express in your life starts here and is processed through that filter in one way or another. Question then is how well is that actually working? Because even the most wonderful supercomputer, no matter how powerful it is, has a finite capacity. So you have, and you're watching this on some kind of a device. Could be your phone, could be a computer, whatever it be. Point being is if I was to ask you to turn on every other program on that device and start downloading and start uploading so that you've got all of the circuits working on that device as much as possible, how well is that going to work? Well, it's going to probably start getting a little bit laggy. It's probably going to start going a bit slower. It might even crash if it's overloaded too much. Well, guess what? Same thing goes right here. That is what stress truly is. It is all of the stuff that's going on in the processing of our mind. Remember, the brain takes all forms of information, be it physical, chemical, or emotional, translates it into neurotransmitters, not unlike binary, and computes it to then come up with a representation of what we perceive as our reality. The question then is, what kind of information is actually going into that system? Number 2, what is our perception of it? And 3, what is our overall capacity? Now, I'm going to start with the concept of capacity because I think that one's a relatively simple one to understand. And again, know this also, that different people, because of their genetics, because of their anatomy, are going to have different processing speeds, different capacities, and different talents. Some have an affinity for book learning, others not so much. It's all done by hand, as a very simple example. So your brain is both soft-wired and hardwired ever so slightly differently from everybody else. Don't compare yourself to other people. So what this means here is it means that each of us has a different capacity. Some people, we may only have this amount of processing capacity. Other people, they might have something more along these lines like this. Whatever it would be is the kind of information that we are feeding into the system, both the conscious stuff and also the unconscious stuff, including your perceptual awareness. That is all of the stuff that's going on around you as you're listening to the sound of my voice, doing whatever activity you are doing right now. That information goes into your brain and it's processing what is this doing, like a whole bunch of programs or apps running in the background of your device right now. So capacity then can be raised, or it can also be lowered the more background stuff you have going on. So then consider not just the volume of the stuff that's going on at the moment, but also the quality of that information that's going in. So we described two general kinds of stress. One is going to be called eustress. What eustress is the good kind of stuff, the stuff that you don't necessarily mind. So this would be, for example, you show up to work, you love your work. Yeah, you still have stuff you do, you have deadlines you have to meet, you have financial obligations, but what you receive back in terms of your financial reward, your sense of accomplishment, your sense of purpose, all of that makes it so well worth it. That's what we're talking about, eustress. Distress, on the other hand, this is going to be the kind of stuff that you just don't like. This is going to be where you have to work with that person that you just don't get along with. This is where you have to do that task that you just hate. This is where you have those chores where everything is a burden and it just wears you down. It's palpable. You feel it. You see, just me talking about this right now, you can probably feel when I start saying distress. Think about the things in your life that bring you distress. Your entire physiology starts to change. That's my point. That is the whole point of what this video here is going to be about. It is that not just the quantity, but the quality of the stress based on our perceptions significantly changes the way that our brain is going to process that information. That will impact our physiology, that influences our mind, and that also influences our health to a very significant degree. So let me show you a little bit more about what I actually mean. First step, I'm going to talk a little bit about those three different kinds of stress that we have already discussed: the chemical, the physical, and also the emotional. And we're going to keep going back to this idea of the supercomputer to understand how this manifests through your brain and how that in turn manifests through your body, expressing itself through health. So first up, the idea of chemical influence on our neurophysiology. Well, a neurochemical, it's a chemical in and of itself. And we can understand how food, substances, all of this sort of stuff affects our brain function. Well, this also includes then how different forms of chemical stress change the physiology of our body, also the physiology of our brain, where over a period of time, our body then starts to have to make certain adaptations or changes based on excesses or deficiencies in different parts of our body. So for example, let's say that for whatever reason, you've got some kind of a nutritional deficiency coupled with a toxicity of some kind. In other words, there's something your body needs that it has too little of, and it has too much of something that's actually very, very bad for it. Now, as we've also said previous, your brain and your body, they're not weak. They're going to find ways to compensate for this. But what it's going to mean is it's going to mean that it's going to need to change the physiology in some way or another. This is what we mean by soft wiring. The idea that nothing is completely static, that innate intelligence that governs, controls your body is always trying to find alternate pathways to accomplish the same thing. But in order to make a change here, it's going to have to make a change here. And then if there's a change here, it's going to have to make a change over here. What this actually means, it means that in our body, we have a process that's known as non-linearity. And what that means, it means that A does not cause B. It means that A does not cause C. B can be caused by any number of different things. And there is this interconnectedness of absolutely everything. The reason that this is particularly important is because if and when a person is expressing some kind of symptom, some kind of problem, we have the tendency to think that, oh, okay, we would just need to find if that's what the problem is, the diagnosis, what's the appropriate treatment for that? But what I'm saying is that model is straight up wrong. And it's because, remember, nonlinearity and not all roads lead to Rome. It is that diagnosis can actually be caused by a number of different pathways. Where the problem is not always where the problem is. The body finds ways of compensating for different forms of stress. And we cannot disconnect, and we cannot discount that in terms of our ability to actually get well and to identify what the true underlying cause is. This is why we cannot trust symptoms by themselves. We actually have to do different kinds of tests to find out what is appropriate. So that's to simply put stress on a chemical level. On a physical level, we had alluded to this one a little bit earlier as well, about posture being a reflection of your inner reality. So as we had said, is that if you've got an issue with your neurological system on your frame, your body's going to try to find ways of compensating by shifting hips, shifting your neck, shifting your shoulders, all that sort of stuff. If you ever stand in a line and you find that your weight shifts one side more to the other, or you sleep twisted, or when you sit, you shift one side more than the other. These are all some of the subtle signs how your body is attempting to adapt to physical stress. The thing about it is it can accumulate like unpaid compound interest. And this is oftentimes where people go on to develop physical or organic conditions. It's not because they only just had a problem happen a month ago and this has come quite out of the blue. No, that process has been accumulating unpaid compound interest over a very, very, very long period of time. And those stresses then, because your brain is aware of all of the physical postural stresses, it keeps the tally, that is reducing your capacity to the point where you're just simply put not able to adapt, you're not able to respond anymore, and something's going to give. It doesn't matter how strong your body is or even how strong your mind is. We still live in a physical universe with physical laws and physical limitations to what each of us is capable of. We can only adapt to stress for so long before something is going to give. That is very important to understand from the physical standpoint. We cannot continue to abuse our bodies and expect to continue to stay well indefinitely. Now, the third source of stress then, and this is arguably the biggest one, it's our sense of emotional stress and well-being. And this is the concept of our perceptions. So using that example that we had just talked about, remember again, eustress versus distress. The only difference there was our perception of the same activities. Some people love their work, other people hate it. Some people love their family, other people not so much. You can pick your friends, but not your family in certain circumstances. And you might be familiar with that common expression that you are the average of the 5 people that you associate with the most. This is particularly important because remember what we talked about in a previous video. It's that whether we want it to or not, we are influenced very much by the people around us. And they can influence us in ways that we both do like, but also ways that we don't like. Somebody else's opinion, and if we respect them as the individual, their opinion may not necessarily be appropriate for what we need. But because we respect them, we make a certain choice and decision that may not necessarily be the right thing for us. So it starts getting to be really, really challenging right here. Point being is that the perception is ultimately a bit of everything. And it's because your perception changes your entire physiology. It changes the way that your brain is able to process all of the information that it receives from the outside world. And that very much then influences the kind of person that we are and the health that we express. So I ask you this as a kind of question, as a silly little example. Think of things that trigger you. These can be people. These can be world events. These can be opinions, circumstances, certain words, things that trigger you where you just feel agitated in their presence. So think of politics. Think of religion. Think of individuals, maybe celebrities or something like that. Point being is that you're people who you both have affinity towards and also people who you probably quite despise. I want you to imagine that what you are doing is, first and foremost, you're spending all of your time, all of your life, either A, around the people that you love, who support you, who raise you up, who make you feel lovely and wonderful, versus you spend all of your time around the people or listening to the TV or the internet or the circumstances reinforcing all of the things that you hate, that are wrong with the world. Whichever way that you ultimately choose, that ultimately becomes your reality. And it becomes your reality through nothing else than your perception of it. You see, if you're surrounded, and this is kind of the thing, you deliberately choose to surround yourself with the people, with the ideas that resonate from you, that bring out the best in you. When you make that conscious decision to listen and to find what resonates with you, that changes the way that you feel, even in this moment. Think, for example, you're listening to music that you like. That's going to carry a certain frequency, and you feel it in all of the cells in your body in a positive, uplifting kind of way. That changes your physiology. That changes your adaptive capacity. That changes the way that your body is then able to handle the different kinds of stresses and circumstances that are otherwise happening in your life. Now, let's say, on the other hand, that you feel you're a victim. You have to hang out with these certain people even though you don't really like it. And there are all of these problems and all of these injustices, and you choose to continuously reinforce all of that negativity by watching all of the TV shows and listening to all of the internet gurus and pundits and all this sort of stuff that just reinforces how bad it is, and you just focus on all of the problems. Guess what? That also manifests in your physiology. In particular, what's that going to do? That is going to lower your state. That is going to lower your stress and adaptive capacity. And because your adaptive capacity is lowered, it means that, unfortunately, your body is not going to be able to process near as much of the stuff that it needs to in the course of your life. So not only is your physiology making you susceptible to sickness and illness, it also means that it's not able to handle as much, which is going to compound and it's going to multiply that particular kind of effect. So what are we saying here in a nutshell? I know I've kind of jumped around a little bit more than that. And if there's any video here that's probably the most confusing at this point, this is probably it. Let me boil it down just to simply put right here. Stress, at the end of the day, it's all about your perception. It's about the way that you perceive the information about your reality. And it's also about then what you are doing with that information. Because yes, you can have too much of a good thing, that you're not burning the candle at both ends, but that you're actually doing and making productive choices in your life. We're going to have stress in our life one way or another. The question is are you being deliberate and conscious about the people you associate with, the ideas that you expose your mind to, and the actions that you do that are taking you in the direction that you actually desire? And are you taking proactive strategies that allow you to reduce the negative input at the same time? I'm not saying, go live in a cave somewhere. But what I'm saying is that you deliberately do not listen to certain people that infuriate you, or you just don't let that kind of influence change the act and behavior that you have. You've got your focus, you work on you. Dr. John Demartini says that when you have mastered your life, you'll know that the quality and the voice and the vision on the inside is greater than the opinions that are coming at you from the outside. Very true. You need to work on you, your perception, your control. You are the creator of your perception, your reality, by controlling the influences that go into your mind. So the question is how are you doing that? And for this, we have what's known as an Eisenhower matrix. I didn't come up with this. I don't even know where the origin of the term is. But this is a little exercise that's probably worth doing. And this is simply put looking at all of the activities that you do in the course of a day. And you can actually write this out as a list if you want, or you can simply put, you check in with yourself using your emotional state to know and to use that as a register, listening to your own innate voice. Is this congruent? Is this something I believe? Is this taking me positively forward in the way that I want my life to go? Or is this keeping me stuck where I don't want to be? You have a look at 4 different dynamics, 4 areas of your life in this certain quadrant. You've got important and you've got not important. And on the other side, you've got urgent and you have non-urgent. So of the upper 2, the important, these are the things that are important in your life. These are the things, and pay attention, this is whether or not you want to do them, that this will ultimately take you where in your life you want to go. And again, this requires that what you are doing is you are using your cortex. You're using the creative, the vision part of your mind in order to say, okay, yes, I have this certain task that I need to do, and no, I may not want to do it, but it is important to get me where I want to go. That is what it means to be the controller of your life. That's what it means where you can choose what you do with the stress that you encounter in your life. So there are going to be times where both, okay, there's something that's got to be done right now. Obviously do that. And then there's some of the stuff where it's not quite as important. It's the difference between short-term, long-term. Now, in a contrast to that, things that are not important. So these are going to be where people are chirping at you, or they're offering their unsolicited opinions or their ideas. And what it just does is it's just dragging you down. This isn't helping me. This is not constructive feedback. This is not constructive criticism. This isn't helping me where I actually want to go in my life. If that's the case, why are you spending time here? See, a lot of times these particular kind of activities, people do what they do, but they are not being a conscious human being. They are just doing what they think they need to do because somebody told them that's what they need to do, without realizing this is not actually going to help you get where you ultimately want to go. Now, this is all part of the bigger balance, because again, there are certain things where we don't necessarily want to do it, but it's important if we want to go where we want to go. So for example, let's say that you want to do some exercise. Well, if you're doing too much exercise, that's going to take away from other important things that you need to do in order to increase your quality of life. But if you're not doing any exercise whatsoever, but you say you want to be fit and healthy, guess what? That's also not going to take you where you want to go. So it's important. You need to be real. Look at the course of what you do in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year. Where are you spending your time? What kind of stress are you letting come into your system, and how are you processing it? Is it reducing your capacity where you feel worse at the end of the day? Or is it raising you up where you feel energized? You feel like you've accomplished something. You feel like tomorrow is going to be better than it was today. You can use this as a very simple exercise to know which direction are you going, irrespective of your outer circumstances. Why? Because outer circumstances, outer reality, it's always going to be there. It's always going to be demanding different things about us, but we get to choose through our perception and being able to listen to that innate voice, which direction do we ultimately want to go? That is what it actually means when people say they are becoming the creators of their life. They are choosing what to do, and they are choosing what their perception is going to be. And again, that includes there are going to be times where there's stuff you don't want to do it. But if you've got that bigger picture, I don't want to do this right now, I know that it's terrible, But this is important and it needs to be done now because it's going to take me this way. That completely changes your physiology versus I have to do this and I don't want to do this, and just drags you down without seeing what the big picture is, and that manifests then through your health. This is why the mental attitude and so much focus is on positivity, on focus, on what we are envisioning. It doesn't mean that we need to exclude the rest of reality. We're still allowed to have our downtimes. We're still allowed to have our complaining moments, but it's a question of what do we do immediately after that. Again, not how do we react, how do we respond? Because that's the difference between using that lower part of our brain versus the upper part of our brain. And simply by changing our perception, even in that moment, that makes a very substantial difference in terms of the life that we're creating and how that manifests ultimately through our health and our well-being. We talked about it in an earlier video. You remember the surge protector? We talked about how if there's too much juice going through the system, that what that's going to do is that's going to eventually short-circuit you and sabotage your every effort. Your perception of the world, that is what we are referring to right there. When you're focusing on negative all of the time, that's going to continuously fry you no matter what you're trying to do. When you're focusing on the direction that you are going as you are doing all of your daily activities, that then is going to be the real secret sauce that's going to help multiply your effects as you are being productive and doing all of the other avenues in order to improve the quality of your health, quality of your lifestyle, and indeed quality of life, not just for you, but for all of the people around you. So simply put, finishing this video, focus on where are you spending your time and where are you spending your attention to, because where your attention goes, your body will follow. It's the law. There's no other way. Good luck with this activity. We'll see you on the next video.